My name is Samantha Mitchell, and I'm 34 years old. 3 years ago, I sold my tech company for millions and bought a stunning $2 million estate in Vermont with mountain views that take your breath away. I thought my success would make my family proud, but instead, it's driven a wedge between us. My sister Kimberly's passive-aggressive comments have gotten worse, and my mother enables her behavior. Yesterday, I received a text that broke my heart. I was disinvited from our family Thanksgiving. As the hurt washed over me, something inside me hardened into determination. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow my journey of turning holiday heartbreak into something beautiful. I grew up in a middle-class family in suburban Boston. Our house was modest but comfortable, with a small backyard where we'd have summer barbecues. From an early age, I showed signs of ambition that seemed foreign to my family. While they were content with stability and routine, I was always dreaming bigger, wanting to create something meaningful in the world. My father, James, recognized this drive in me. He worked as an engineer at a local firm, putting in long hours to provide for us. "Sammy," he'd tell me, using my childhood nickname, "don't let anyone clip your wings." He would slip me books about entrepreneurs and innovators, nurturing my curiosity while my mother worried I was setting myself up for disappointment. Mom, Grace is her name, always favored my sister Kimberly. It wasn't obvious at first, but as we grew older, the pattern became undeniable. Kimberly was the pretty one, the social butterfly who did everything by the book. She married her high school sweetheart Bradley right after college, had 2 perfect children, Emma and Jacob, and settled in a nice suburban home just 20 minutes from our parents. "Why can't you find a nice man and settle down?" became my mother's refrain as I built my business through my 20s, pouring everything I had into my tech startup. Mom never understood that my company was my baby, requiring just as much love, attention, and sacrifice as Kimberly's children. My brother Evan falls somewhere in the middle of our family dynamic. 2 years younger than me and 3 years older than Kimberly, he's always been the peacemaker, the one who smooths things over when tensions rise. He married Nicole, a kindergarten teacher with a kind heart, and they have twin boys. Evan works in finance, successful enough to be comfortable but not so successful that it threatens the family hierarchy. The first major holiday disaster happened 2 Christmases ago. I had just closed a major round of funding, and my company was being featured in business magazines. As we opened presents in my parents' living room, Kimberly made a cutting remark. "Some people just get lucky, I guess. The rest of us have to work for what we have." I still remember how the room fell silent, how my father cleared his throat and changed the subject, how my mother pretended not to hear. Only Evan met my eyes with an apologetic look. That night, I cried in my old bedroom, surrounded by my childhood trophies and awards that suddenly seemed to mock me. Dad passed away last year, heart attack, sudden and unexpected. His loss hit me especially hard because he was my champion, the one who understood my drive. At his funeral, Kimberly monopolized the sympathy, playing the role of devastated daughter perfectly while I was too numb to perform my grief for relatives and family friends. Last Thanksgiving was our first without him. We gathered at Kimberly's house, where she prepared an elaborate meal and acted as if she were the glue holding our fractured family together. When I mentioned securing my first patent, my mother quickly redirected the conversation to Emma's role in the school play. By dessert, I felt invisible. That's when I decided to buy the Vermont estate. It wasn't an impulsive purchase. I'd been looking for months for a place that could become a new center for our family, somewhere we could build fresh memories without the ghosts of old dynamics haunting every interaction. The property had everything: 6 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, acres of land with hiking trails, and a view that Dad would have loved. When I announced my purchase at Mother's birthday dinner in March, the reaction was chilling. "Well, isn't that extravagant?" Mom said, exchanging glances with Kimberly. "I suppose you need to spend your money on something if you don't have a family to support." Kimberly added, "I hope you're not expecting us to drive all the way to Vermont for every holiday now. Some of us have children with schedules and commitments." Only Evan showed genuine interest, asking to see photos and suggesting he could help me find local contractors for any renovations I wanted to do. Despite their reaction, I persisted in my efforts to maintain family bonds. I invited them up for Memorial Day weekend, but only Evan and his family came. I sent care packages and made the 3-hour drive to attend every family birthday and milestone. I called my mother twice a week, asking about her garden club and her book group, subjects that wouldn't lead to comparisons or criticism. As this Thanksgiving approached, I saw an opportunity. I would host the family at my new home, creating new traditions while honoring old ones. I spent weeks preparing, ordering a heritage turkey from a local farm, planning a menu that included everyone's favorites, finding the perfect decorations to make the house feel warm and welcoming. I even set up rooms for everyone, the blue bedroom with its own bathroom for Mom, the garden suite for Kimberly and Bradley, the twin room with built-in bunk beds for their kids, and the cozy pine room for Evan's family. I wanted everything to be perfect, a fresh start for all of us in a beautiful setting. I had no idea that while I was planning all of this, Kimberly was orchestrating my exclusion from the family holiday altogether. Tuesday morning started like any other day. I was working from my home office, reviewing quarterly projections with a cup of coffee, when my phone pinged with a text message. Seeing Kimberly's name, I felt the usual mix of hope and apprehension that accompanied any communication from my sister. The message read, "Hey, change of plans for Thanksgiving. We're doing it at my house again this year. Mom thinks it makes more sense since everyone's already in town. Maybe you can come for Christmas instead if you're not traveling." I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the words, feeling as if I'd been slapped. There was no apology, no acknowledgement that I had already been preparing to host. Just a casual dismissal of all my plans, as if they meant nothing. My hands shaking, I called my mother immediately. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice carefully neutral. "Mom, I just got a text from Kimberly saying Thanksgiving is at her house now. What's going on? I've been planning for weeks." A pause, then a sigh. "Samantha, don't make this difficult. Kimberly's house is more convenient for everyone. You know how far Vermont is, and with the possibility of snow this time of year. It's a 3-hour drive, Mom. The same drive I make every time there's a family gathering." "Well, that's your choice, dear. Nobody asks you to come to everything." The conversation deteriorated from there. As we talked, the real story emerged in bits and pieces, between the lines of what she was saying. This wasn't a sudden change of plans. They had been discussing this behind my back for days, maybe weeks. "I just don't understand why you needed to buy that enormous house anyway," my mother said, her voice taking on the familiar tone of disapproval. "It's so ostentatious. Your father and I raised you to be practical." "Dad would have loved this place," I said, my voice catching. "He would have stood on the deck watching the sunset over the mountains and been so happy for me." "Your father indulged your differences too much," she replied, the words striking like tiny daggers. "He encouraged you to think you were special, different from the rest of us. And look where it's gotten you, alone in that big, empty house." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, replaying her words. "Your differences." As if my ambition, my success, my desire to build something of my own were character flaws to be tolerated rather than achievements to be celebrated. An hour later, Evan called. His voice was low, as if he was calling from somewhere he wouldn't be overheard. "Sam, I'm so sorry about Thanksgiving. I tried to change their minds, but you know how Mom and Kim get once they've decided something." "What's the real reason, Evan?" "It's not about the drive." He hesitated before answering. "Kim said, she said she was tired of her kids hearing about Aunt Samantha's big success story. She told Mom that the last few gatherings have turned into the Samantha show and she wants a normal family holiday." The injustice of it burned. I had never boasted about my achievements at family gatherings. If anything, I deliberately downplayed my success to avoid exactly this kind of resentment. "There's more," Evan added reluctantly. "Kim told the extended family you were too busy with work to make it this year." Aunt Judy called Mom to say how sorry she was that you're missing another family event. So not only was I disinvited, but I was also being painted as the workaholic who prioritizes career over family. The narrative was being controlled, and I was powerless to correct it without seeming petty or defensive. That night, I cried myself to sleep for the first time since my father died. I felt like a child again, the odd one out, too different to belong. The house that I had bought with such hope suddenly seemed to mock me with its empty rooms and echoing spaces. But something shifted in me as I lay awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling. I remembered something my first investor had told me when I was struggling to get my company off the ground: the most successful people aren't those who never face rejection, but those who refuse to be defined by it. I had built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing. I had overcome setbacks and obstacles that would have defeated most people. Was I really going to let my sister's pettiness and my mother's conditional love determine my worth? As the first light of dawn filtered through my bedroom windows, illuminating the mountains beyond, a plan began to take shape in my mind. If my family didn't want to share Thanksgiving with me, perhaps it was time to redefine what family meant altogether. Wednesday morning, I stood in my dining room, a beautiful space with a long maple table that could seat 16, chandeliers that cast a warm glow on the pine walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. I had imagined this room filled with family, plates being passed, glasses clinking, the comfortable chaos of a holiday meal. Looking at the empty space, I had my epiphany. This table could still be filled. This house could still ring with laughter. Just not with the people I had originally planned. I immediately called Bailey, my executive assistant who had stayed with me even after I sold the company. "Bailey, I need your help with something last minute and completely unrelated to work." After explaining the situation, I was met with instant support. "Give me an hour to rearrange some things, and I'm all yours," she said. "No one should be alone on Thanksgiving, especially not you." We created a list of potential guests: colleagues who lived too far from their families to travel home, friends who had mentioned being alone for the holiday, new neighbors I had met since moving to Vermont. But it still didn't feel like enough. What about people who really need a place to go? I mused aloud. Bailey suggested calling the community center in the nearby town. A quick conversation with the director there led me to Lauren, an old college friend I'd lost touch with who, as fate would have it, now ran a homeless shelter in Burlington, about an hour away. "Samantha Mitchell? It's been years," Lauren exclaimed when I reached her. "A Thanksgiving dinner? That's incredibly generous, but transportation would be an issue for most of our residents." "I'll arrange transportation," I said immediately. "Vans, drivers, whatever's needed." While Bailey worked on logistics, I called Trevor, a chef I had met at a charity event who had recently opened a restaurant in Stowe. I explained my last-minute Thanksgiving plan and asked if he could help coordinate the food preparation. "I was planning to close the restaurant and give my staff the day off," he said, "but this is such a wonderful idea. Let me talk to my team. I bet some of them would volunteer to help out." Within hours, Trevor called back. "3 of my cooks want to join. We'll handle everything food-related." With the core elements in place, I threw myself into preparations. A trip to the local home goods store resulted in bags of decorations, rustic centerpieces, linen napkins in fall colors, candles in varying heights. The grocery store manager's eyes widened at my order but promised everything would be delivered that afternoon. As I was checking out, my phone rang, an unknown number. "Is this Samantha?" "It's Diana, your cousin from your dad's side." Diana and I had been close as children but drifted apart in adulthood. She lived in New Hampshire with her husband and 3 kids. "I just got off the phone with Aunt Judy," she continued. "She mentioned you weren't going to make it to Thanksgiving because of work, but that didn't sound like you. So I called Evan." My heart sank. More family drama was the last thing I needed right now. "He told me what really happened," Diana said, anger evident in her voice. "That's completely unfair. Dad always said Uncle James's family could be cold, but this is beyond cold." Before I could respond, she continued, so here's what I'm thinking. We were going to do a small Thanksgiving at home, but what if we came to you instead? The kids would love to see your new place, and frankly, I'd rather spend the holiday with family who actually values connection over conformity. Tears sprang to my eyes. I'd love that, Diana. But I should tell you, it's not going to be a traditional family gathering. I've invited some unconventional guests. After explaining my plan, there was a brief silence on the line. You know what? Diana finally said. That sounds like exactly the kind of Thanksgiving our kids should experience. Count us in. And Sam? I'm really proud of what you've built, both your business and your character. By Wednesday evening, my guest list had grown to over 30 people, a mix of friends, colleagues, shelter residents, elderly neighbors, and Diana's family. The house buzzed with activity as deliveries arrived and volunteers helped set up. Bailey had somehow found additional tables and chairs from a local event rental company, and Trevor's team was prepping in the kitchen. As I surveyed the controlled chaos, my phone pinged with a text from Kimberly. Heard from Aunt Judy that you're too busy for family Thanksgiving but not too busy to throw a party for strangers. Real nice, Samantha. Way to make Mom feel terrible. I put the phone away without responding. Nothing I could say would change her perspective, and I had more important things to focus on than her attempt to make me feel guilty. Later that night, as I was writing place cards at the kitchen island, I received another text, this one from Evan. Heard what you're doing tomorrow. It's really cool, Sam. Wish we could be there. For the first time since receiving Kimberly's disinvitation, I felt a sense of peace. Maybe this Thanksgiving would be different than I had planned, but it was shaping up to be something meaningful in a way I hadn't anticipated. As I went to bed that night, exhausted but excited, I realized I hadn't thought about my mother's disapproval or Kimberly's resentment for hours. Instead, my mind was filled with menu plans, seating arrangements, and the faces of people who would be genuinely happy to share a meal in my home. Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day, dawned with an unexpected gift, the season's first snowfall. I woke to find the estate transformed, every branch and roofline outlined in white, the mountains in the distance looking like they belonged on a postcard. It was breathtakingly beautiful and exactly the setting I had imagined when I first bought the property. The peaceful moment was interrupted by my ringing phone. Kimberly's name flashed on the screen. I considered letting it go to voicemail but decided to face whatever was coming. How dare you try to steal my thunder, she demanded without preamble. Thanksgiving at my house is our tradition now, and suddenly you're hosting some charity case dinner? Do you have any idea how that makes me look? I took a deep breath. Kim, this isn't about you. I was disinvited from the family dinner, so I made other plans. I'm not asking anyone to choose sides. That's exactly what you're doing. Diana called to say she's taking her kids to your house instead of coming here. And now Mom is all upset, wondering if she made a mistake. So that was the real reason for the call. Not concern for my feelings, but worry that their united front was cracking. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice level, everyone is free to spend the holiday however they want. That's all I'm doing. You always have to be different, don't you? Always have to prove you're better than the rest of us with our normal lives and normal problems. The familiar accusation stung, but less than it would have a few days ago. I'm not trying to be better than anyone, Kim. I'm just trying to be myself and make something positive out of a hurtful situation. I need to go now, I have guests arriving soon. After hanging up, I found a voicemail from my mother. Samantha, I just heard about this event you're hosting. I don't understand why you need to cause drama like this. Your sister went to a lot of trouble planning Thanksgiving, and now you've upset her. Please think about someone besides yourself for once. The words were like a script from my childhood. Any time I stepped out of the role assigned to me, I was causing drama or being selfish. But the sting was duller now, overshadowed by the excitement of the day ahead. As I deleted the voicemail, another text came through, this one from Evan. Kim is on the warpath. Mom's stressed. I told them both to back off. Nicole and I have been talking, might stop by your place later with the boys if that's okay? Don't tell Kay. I smiled as I texted back a simple always welcome, then turned my attention to the final preparations. The house was transformed. Trevor and his team had taken over the kitchen, filling it with delicious aromas. Volunteers from the community center were arranging chairs and putting finishing touches on the table settings. In the great room, a fire crackled in the stone fireplace, and soft music played through the speakers. I found myself standing in front of the antique sideboard that had come with the house, running my fingers over a carved wooden box I had placed there that morning. Inside was my father's carving set, the knife and fork he had used every Thanksgiving and Christmas of my childhood, passed down from his father. I had claimed it after his death, knowing how much it meant to him. "I wish you were here, Dad," I whispered. "I think you would have approved." I could almost hear his voice, "Create the life you want, not the one others expect." It had been his mantra, his gift to me when I felt constrained by my mother's narrow vision or Kimberly's judgment. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Trevor stood there, looking slightly frazzled but smiling. "We've got a situation with the turkeys. The oven is amazing, but we're trying to cook 3 birds at once, and the timing is tricky. Also, Lauren called, the van with the shelter guests is running about 30 minutes late because of the snow." I laughed, feeling a release of tension. These were good problems: logistics, timing, coordination. The kind of challenges I knew how to handle, unlike the emotional minefield of my family dynamics. "Let's tackle one thing at a time," I said, following him to the kitchen. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The snow continued to fall gently, adding to the magical atmosphere. By noon, the house was ready, fires lit in every fireplace, candles glowing on mantels and tables, the dining room and great room arranged to accommodate everyone comfortably. Bailey arrived early with her boyfriend, both carrying additional bottles of wine and a homemade pecan pie. "The roads are getting slippery," she reported. I told everyone to drive carefully and allow extra time. At 1 o'clock, the first guests arrived: Walter, my 82-year-old neighbor who had lost his wife earlier that year. He brought a small potted poinsettia and an envelope of photographs. "Thought you might like to see what this property looked like back in the 70s when my Elaine and I first moved to the area," he explained, handing me the envelope. "This place was famous for its parties back then. Nice to see it coming to life again." Shortly after, my colleague Jessica arrived with her partner from Boston, followed by a family of 5 from the community center, the parents looking nervous until their children's excitement broke the ice. The van from the shelter arrived next, bringing Lauren and 7 residents, including 2 veterans who kept thanking me with such sincerity that I had to fight back tears. Diana's arrival with her husband and 3 children brought more energy to the gathering. Her eldest daughter hugged me tight, saying, "Mom says you're the cool cousin who doesn't take crap from anyone. I want to be like you when I grow up." As people mingled, initial awkwardness gave way to conversation and connection. The children discovered the game room in the basement and ran back upstairs with excited reports of the ping-pong table and video games. Walter found himself surrounded by young adults eager to hear his stories about Vermont in the old days. At 3 o'clock, with dinner preparations in their final stages, I gathered everyone in the great room for a welcome toast. Looking around at the diverse group, different ages, backgrounds, circumstances, I felt a surge of emotion. "I want to thank you all for being here today," I began. "Some of us are old friends, some new acquaintances, and some meeting for the first time. But today, we're a chosen family, brought together by circumstance and choice. In my experience, those can be the strongest bonds of all." Glasses were raised, smiles exchanged. As we moved toward the dining area, the doorbell rang once more. I opened it to find Charlotte, my first investor and mentor, standing there with her wife Helen. "Surprise!" Charlotte exclaimed. "We were supposed to be in California with Helen's family, but our flight got cancelled due to weather. Bailey mentioned your gathering, and we thought we'd see if there was room for 2 more strays." "There's always room," I assured them, ushering them inside. The tables looked beautiful, mismatched chairs but carefully arranged place settings, centerpieces of pine cones, mini pumpkins, and candles creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. Chef Trevor had worked miracles, creating a traditional meal that accommodated every dietary restriction while still feeling cohesive and festive. As everyone found their seats, I stood at the head of the main table, preparing to say a few words before the meal began. Looking at the faces turned expectantly toward me, some familiar, some new, all welcome, I felt a fullness in my heart that pushed out the lingering hurt of rejection. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, the doorbell rang again. I excused myself and went to answer the door, wondering who else might be joining our eclectic celebration. Opening it, I froze in surprise. Evan stood there with Nicole and their twin boys, all bundled up against the snow. Behind them, I could see their car in the driveway, still running with the headlights on. "Hey, Sam," Evan said, looking both apologetic and determined. "I hope it's not too late to take you up on that invitation." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I stepped forward and hugged my brother tightly. "It's never too late. Come in, you're freezing." As they stomped snow from their boots in the entryway, Evan explained in a low voice, things got tense at Kim's. Mom kept checking her phone and sighing dramatically. Kim was snapping at everyone. When she made a comment about you always needing to be the center of attention, I'd had enough. Told her that was rich coming from her, grabbed our coats, and left. Nicole added, "The boys were disappointed anyway. They were looking forward to seeing your place." She looked around at the decorated house with appreciation. "It's even more beautiful than the pictures." "We've got plenty of food," I assured them, taking their coats. "Come meet everyone." Leading them into the dining area, I made a quick introduction. "Everyone, this is my brother Evan, his wife Nicole, and my nephews Zachary and Tyler. They're just in time to join us." Diana waved from her table, and the rest of the guests smiled welcomingly. Trevor quickly set up additional place settings while the twins gravitated toward Diana's children, instant cousins reunited. With everyone finally settled, I raised my glass again. "As I was saying, I'm grateful to each of you for being here today. When I bought this house, I had a vision of filling it with people I care about, creating a place of warmth and welcome. Today, that vision is coming true in a way I never expected but am deeply thankful for." Chef Trevor and his team served the meal with professional efficiency. The turkeys were perfectly cooked, the sides abundant and delicious. Conversation flowed easily between the tables, punctuated by laughter and exclamations of delight at the food. I found myself moving between groups, making introductions, refilling glasses, ensuring everyone had what they needed. At one point, I overheard Walter telling one of the veterans about his own service decades earlier, the two men discovering a shared experience despite the years between them. Jessica and her partner were deep in conversation with Lauren about the affordable housing crisis, brainstorming ways their respective companies might collaborate on solutions. Diana's husband was showing cell phone pictures of their recent hiking trip to Trevor's sous chef, who turned out to be an avid mountaineer. The children had organized themselves into a complex game that involved running between the dining room and the den, their shrieks of laughter providing a joyful soundtrack to the adult conversations. As dessert was being served, an impressive array of pies, cookies, and Trevor's signature maple creme brulee, I stepped into the kitchen for a moment of quiet. The emotional roller coaster of the past few days was catching up with me, and I needed a brief respite from hosting duties. I was standing by the window, watching the snow continue to fall in the gathering dusk, when Evan found me. "This is incredible, Sam," he said, gesturing toward the dining room. "All these people from different walks of life, coming together. Dad would have loved it." "Do you think so?" I asked, my voice catching slightly. "I know so. He always said you had the biggest heart in the family, even if Mom and Kim couldn't see it." He paused, then added, "I'm sorry I haven't stood up for you more over the years." "You're here now," I said simply. "That's what matters." The doorbell rang again, its chime barely audible over the dining room chatter. "I'll get it," Evan offered, but I shook my head. It's my door, I said with a smile. My responsibility. Making my way through the great room, I wondered who else might be arriving so late in the meal. Perhaps more colleagues who had heard about the gathering? Or neighbors curious about the unusual number of cars parked along my normally quiet driveway? I opened the door, and my breath caught in my throat. My mother stood on the porch, alone, a covered dish in her gloved hands and an uncertain expression on her face. For a long moment, we simply looked at each other. My mother seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than she had always been in my mind. The snow dusted her coat and hair, and her cheeks were pink from the cold. "May I come in?" she asked finally, her voice lacking its usual certainty. I stepped back wordlessly, allowing her to enter. She set her dish on the console table and removed her gloves, looking around at the decorations, the coats hung on the rack, the sound of laughter and conversation drifting from the dining room. "It sounds like quite a party," she said, a touch of defensiveness in her tone. "It's Thanksgiving dinner," I corrected her. "With people who wanted to be here." She flinched slightly at the implied criticism but didn't argue. "Instead," she said, "I left Kimberly's early." Things were tense after Evan and Nicole left. I imagine they were. "Kimberly said some things, about you, about your lifestyle." She twisted her hands together, a nervous gesture I rarely saw from her. "Things I've heard her say before, if I'm honest, but never quite so openly hostile." I waited, not willing to make this easy for her. "It made me think about what I've been enabling all these years," she continued. "The way she speaks about you, the way she's always competed with you and felt threatened by your success." She looked up at me directly. "The way I've let her dictate how our family functions." "Why are you here, Mom?" I asked, not unkindly but needing clarity. "Because I owe you an apology," she said, the words coming with obvious difficulty. "I haven't been fair to you, Samantha. I've held you to a different standard than your siblings. I've dismissed your achievements and focused on what I perceive as lacking in your life rather than celebrating all you've accomplished." The admission was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. "I think," she continued hesitantly, "I've been jealous, in a way. You're so much like your father, brave enough to forge your own path, to prioritize your dreams over others' expectations. I never had that courage." Tears pricked at my eyes. "Dad always believed in me, even when no one else did." "I know." She nodded. "And instead of honoring that after he died, I've tried even harder to force you into a mold you were never meant to fit." From the dining room came a burst of laughter, reminding me of all the people waiting, all the connections being formed while we stood in the hallway excavating years of misunderstanding. "What would you like to do now?" I asked her, still unsure where this conversation was leading. She gestured toward the dining room. "I'd like to join your Thanksgiving, if I'm welcome. I brought my cranberry relish." "It was always your father's favorite." The mention of Dad's favorite dish, the conciliatory gesture of bringing food to share, the humility it must have taken to come here alone, all of it softened the protective wall I'd built around my heart. "There's always room for one more," I said, echoing the words I'd used earlier with Charlotte and Helen. I led her into the dining room, where conversations paused as people noticed our arrival. Evan's face registered shock, followed by a cautious smile. Diana looked wary but nodded in acknowledgement. "Everyone," I said, "this is my mother, Grace. She'll be joining us for dessert." There was a moment of adjustment as Trevor quietly arranged another place setting and chairs shifted to make room. I introduced my mother to those seated nearby, Walter, Lauren, the family from the community center, watching as she made an effort to engage, to ask questions, to see these strangers as people worthy of her attention. As pie was served and coffee poured, I observed my mother's expression as she took in the scene, the diverse mix of people, the easy camaraderie that had developed over the meal, the way Evan's boys were now playing a card game with one of the shelter residents. "You've created something remarkable here," she said quietly when I sat beside her. "It's not what I would have chosen for you, but I can see now that my vision was too limited." Before I could respond, Trevor approached with a message. "Chef says we're ready for the dessert wine whenever you'd like to serve it." I excused myself to help with this final course, feeling lighter than I had in years. The conversation with my mother wasn't a magical fix for all our problems, but it was an opening, a crack in the wall that had seemed impenetrable for so long. As I returned to the dining room with bottles of ice wine, a local Vermont specialty I'd been saving for a special occasion, the doorbell rang one final time. Evan caught my eye across the room, his expression instantly alert. We both knew who it must be. "I'll get it," he offered, half rising from his seat. "No," I said firmly. "It's still my door." Making my way back through the great room, I steeled myself for whatever confrontation awaited. When I opened the door, my preparation did nothing to soften the shock of seeing Kimberly standing there alone, her eyes red-rimmed and her expression a complex mix of anger, embarrassment, and something that looked like longing. "Where's Mom?" she demanded without preamble. "Her car's in your driveway." "She's inside, having dessert," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "You're welcome to come in." Kimberly hesitated, clearly torn between her desire to retrieve our mother and her reluctance to enter my home under these circumstances. "Everyone just left," she said finally, her voice smaller than I was used to hearing it. "Bradley took the kids to his parents. All that planning, all that work, and everyone just left." The admission of failure seemed to cost her, and despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. I knew how much Kimberly's image of perfect family harmony meant to her. "What happened?" I asked, genuinely curious. She looked away, watching the snow fall for a moment before answering. "After Evan left, things got weird. Mom kept checking her phone, then announced she was going to drive over here. I told her she was choosing you over me, again." "Again?" I repeated, confused. "Mom has always taken your side." Kimberly gave a bitter laugh. "That's what you think. God, Samantha, you've been Dad's favorite, then Evan's favorite. Mom was the only one who ever put me first, and now she's here at your perfect house with your perfect life." The distortion in her perspective was staggering. All these years, we've been viewing the same family through completely different lenses. "My life isn't perfect, Kim. It's just different from yours. And that should be okay." She didn't respond directly to this, instead asking, "Who are all these people?" "Evan said you invited strangers to Thanksgiving." "Not strangers anymore," I corrected her. "Come inside and meet them. You might be surprised." For a moment, I thought she would refuse. Then her shoulders sagged slightly, and she nodded. "Fine. But just to get Mom." I led her into the dining room, where conversation once again paused as people registered the new arrival. Mom half rose from her seat, looking uncertain. "Everyone," I said, "this is my sister, Kimberly." There was a brief, awkward silence, then Walter called out from his table, "Well, don't just stand there letting in the cold air. Come sit down and try this maple creme brulee. Best I've had since my Elaine was alive, God rest her soul." The simple, direct welcome seemed to disarm Kimberly. She allowed me to take her coat and followed me to where Mom was sitting, accepting the chair Trevor quickly provided. "I saved you some turkey and sides in the kitchen," I told her. "In case you're hungry." She nodded mutely, looking around at the tables of people enjoying themselves, at Evan and Nicole chatting comfortably with Diana and her husband, at our mother engaged in conversation with Lauren about the shelter's needs for the winter months. Diana's oldest daughter approached our table, addressing Kimberly directly. "Are you really Aunt Samantha's sister? She's the coolest. Did you know she has a room downstairs with vintage arcade games? Your kids would love it." "My kids are at their grandparents'," Kimberly said, then added awkwardly, "But yes, I'm her sister." "Cool," the girl replied. "You should bring them next time. We're making this an annual thing. Mom already said we're coming back next year." As the girl rejoined the other children, I saw something shift in Kimberly's expression, a realization, perhaps, that the narrative she had constructed about me and my life had significant gaps. Trevor appeared with a plate of food for Kimberly, beautifully arranged despite being leftovers. She thanked him with uncharacteristic humility and began to eat, her hunger apparently overcoming her pride. Watching her, I was struck by how similar we actually looked, the same Mitchell nose, the same chin with a slight cleft, features we had both inherited from our father. We were, undeniably and irrevocably, sisters. And perhaps that bond, frayed though it was, still held enough strength to begin mending. As the evening progressed, something remarkable happened. The initial tension of my family members' arrival gave way to genuine engagement with the gathering. Mom found common ground with Walter over gardening. Evan introduced his boys to the veterans, who captivated them with G-rated war stories. Even Kimberly, after finishing her meal, allowed Diana to draw her into a conversation about their shared childhood memories. By the time coffee and digestives were being served in the great room, the gathering had evolved into something I could never have planned or anticipated, a true blending of chosen and biological family, of past and present, of different life experiences finding points of connection and understanding. Looking around at the scene, the fire crackling, snow falling beyond the windows, people who had been strangers hours ago now exchanging contact information and making plans to meet again, I felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond any business success I had ever achieved. This, I realized, was what I had been searching for in buying this house, not a showcase for my success or even a new venue for old family dynamics, but a place where genuine connections could form, where people could be accepted for who they were rather than judged for who they weren't. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, with leftovers packaged by Trevor's team and transportation arranged for those who needed it, I found myself standing on the porch saying goodbye to Lauren and the shelter residents. "This meant more than you know," Lauren told me, hugging me tightly. "Not just the meal, but the dignity of being treated as guests rather than charity cases. You've given everyone a memory they'll cherish." "I'd like to do more," I said, an idea forming. "Let's talk next week about how I can support the shelter through the winter." After the last car had departed, I returned to the great room to find my family, Mom, Evan, Nicole, the twins, and even Kimberly, helping with the final cleanup. Diana and her family were staying overnight in the guest rooms I had originally prepared for Mom and Kimberly's families. "You don't have to do that," I told them, gesturing to the plates they were gathering. "The cleaning service will handle it tomorrow." "We want to help," Evan said simply. "It's what family does." Mom approached me, looking tired but more at peace than I had seen her since Dad died. "I'm too old to drive back tonight in this snow." "I don't suppose." "Your room is ready," I told her. "It always has been." Kimberly overheard this exchange and hesitated before asking, "What about me?" I told Bradley not to wait up, but I can call him. The fact that she was asking rather than assuming or demanding represented such a shift that I found myself smiling. "The garden suite has your name on it. And plenty of room if you want to invite Bradley and the kids to come up tomorrow. The snow should be perfect for sledding." For the first time in years, I saw my sister's genuine smile, not the polished, perfect version she presented to the world, but the real one that reminded me of the girl she had been before competition and resentment built walls between us. "I'd like that," she said. "Thank you." Later, as I turned off lights and checked that doors were locked, I paused in the dining room. The tables had been cleared, the chairs pushed back in place. But evidence of the gathering remained in forgotten name cards, wine glass rings on the tablecloth, a child's drawing left behind. I picked up the drawing, a crayon depiction of a large house with many stick figures of different sizes standing in front. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, was written, "Best Thanksgiving Ever." I couldn't have said it better myself. Friday morning brought clear skies and pristine snow covering the grounds of the estate. I woke early, as I usually did, and made my way quietly to the kitchen to start coffee. To my surprise, I found Diana already there, cradling a mug and looking out at the snow-covered mountains. "Morning," she said with a smile. "Hope you don't mind. I'm an early riser too." "Not at all. This is exactly what I wanted when I bought this place, family feeling at home here." We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the sun rise over the mountains, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Yesterday was something special, Diana said finally. Not just the dinner, but what happened afterward. I've never seen Aunt Grace and Kimberly so. I don't know, human? I laughed softly. It was unexpected, that's for sure. Are you okay? With all of it, I mean? It doesn't erase years of being treated as an outsider. The question made me pause and reflect. I think I am. Not because everything's suddenly fixed, but because I finally feel like I'm living authentically rather than constantly seeking approval I was never going to get. The sound of footsteps interrupted our conversation as more people began to wake. The twins came thundering down the stairs, followed by Nicole trying unsuccessfully to quiet them. Sorry, she apologized. They're excited about the snow. No need to be sorry, I assured her. The house was built for life, not silence. Soon the kitchen was bustling with activity. Trevor had left detailed instructions for reheating leftovers, which became an abundant breakfast buffet. Diana's husband took the children outside for snowman building while Evan made calls to arrange for his family to stay an extra day. Around mid-morning, my phone began buzzing with messages and calls, guests from yesterday thanking me for the gathering. Walter sent a photo of himself enjoying leftover pie for breakfast. Lauren called to say one of the veterans had been offered a job by Jessica's partner, who needed skilled maintenance staff at his properties. Your Thanksgiving had ripple effects beyond the meal, Lauren told me. You created a space where people could see each other as individuals, not categories. Shortly after I hung up, Mom appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking more rested than I had seen her in months. I thought we might talk, she said. Just the two of us. We bundled up and walked the snowy grounds, our breath visible in the cold air. The conversation wasn't easy, decades of misunderstanding and hurt feelings couldn't be resolved in a single walk, but it was honest in a way our interactions had rarely been. After your father died, she admitted, I was lost. He was always the bridge between us, he understood you in ways I never did. Without him, I fell back on what was familiar, Kimberly's way of doing things, her vision of family that made sense to me. I know I'm different from what you expected in a daughter, I said. I've stopped apologizing for that, but I never stopped wanting your approval. And I never stopped loving you, she replied. Even when I didn't understand your choices. She paused, looking out at the mountains. This place, it's beautiful, Samantha. Not because it's expensive or impressive, but because it suits you. I can see why you fell in love with it. When we returned to the house, Kimberly's husband Bradley had arrived with their children. The combined group of cousins was engaged in an elaborate snow fort construction project that had expanded to include Diana's husband and Evan. Kimberly approached me hesitantly, coffee mug in hand. This is a beautiful property, she said, echoing our mother without knowing it. The kids are in heaven. Thanks, I said. I'm glad they're enjoying it. An awkward silence fell between us, too many unspoken words crowding the space. I'm sorry, she said finally. For the text. For the things I've said. For years of resenting you instead of just being your sister. I'm sorry too, I replied. For not seeing how my success might have felt to you, for pulling away when things got difficult. Do you think we could try again? She asked. Not pretending everything's perfect, but maybe just being sisters who don't have to compete. Instead of answering immediately, I pointed to where her daughter and Diana's daughter were working together to place a snow head on their snowman. They don't see each other as competitors, I said. Just as family who make each other's lives better by being in them. When did you get so wise? Kimberly asked with a small smile. Probably around the same time you got so brave, I replied, nodding toward her initiation of our conversation. By Sunday afternoon, the house was quiet again. My family had departed with tentative plans for Christmas, at Kimberly's, with my full inclusion. Diana had extracted a promise for regular cousin get-togethers. Evan had left a set of house keys with me for spontaneous visits. As I walked through the rooms, straightening furniture and gathering forgotten items, I felt none of the emptiness I had feared. Instead, the house seemed to hold the echoes of laughter, conversation, and connection. On Monday, I met Lauren for coffee to discuss how I could support the shelter. What began as a simple donation conversation evolved into plans for a more substantial partnership, regular communal dinners at my home for shelter residents, a mentorship program connecting my business contacts with people trying to rebuild their lives, and exploration of a transitional housing project on unused land adjacent to my property. You know, Lauren said as we were leaving, when we were in college, I always admired how you knew exactly what you wanted and went after it. But this version of you, the one who uses her success to create space for others, she's even more impressive. The following weeks brought more connections stemming from Thanksgiving. Walter introduced me to his church group, many of whom were elderly people living alone. We organized a holiday decoration party at my house, combining their traditional ornaments with new ones we created together. Jessica and I established a small investment fund for community initiatives, with Trevor's restaurant as our first recipient, allowing him to offer paid internships to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Christmas at Kimberly's was not perfect, old patterns emerged, tensions flared briefly, but it was fundamentally different from previous gatherings. The wall between us had been breached, allowing glimpses of understanding if not complete harmony. As the new year approached, I found myself sitting in my study one evening, looking out at the winter landscape. On my desk lay a new journal, a gift from Diana, open to the first page. I had been contemplating what to write as my first entry. Picking up my pen, I began, the disinvitation that changed everything. Looking back, what had seemed like rejection had actually been the push I needed to redefine what family meant to me, to create connections based on authenticity rather than obligation, to transform my beautiful house into a true home. The journey with my biological family was ongoing, with progress and setbacks likely in equal measure. But my concept of family had expanded beyond blood ties to include chosen connections, forming a network of relationships that enriched my life in ways I had never anticipated when I purchased this estate. As snow began to fall again outside my window, I added a final line to my journal entry: sometimes life's greatest gifts come wrapped in rejection, pushing us toward the connections we truly need rather than the ones we thought we wanted. I closed the journal, feeling a sense of peace and anticipation. The Vermont estate that had once symbolized my isolation now represented possibility, connection, and a new way of defining success, not by what I had acquired, but by what I could share. Have you ever had a painful rejection that unexpectedly led to something beautiful in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that rejection doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes, it's just the beginning of a better one. Thank you for being part of my journey, and I wish you a holiday season filled with authentic connections and unexpected blessings.